Okay, we're here again.
Hi, everyone.
Hey. Okay. I know it's been a while, guys, and please, I know. Last week I was like, we're totally gonna do a show, and then you guys saw nothing. So, we're here. Okay. So don't be upset. Hi everyone. This is Trigger Warning 2A, and I am Antonia Okafor.
And I'm Nina Prevo. Great to see everyone tonight.
Yeah, and we are just two gals, pro-gun girls, who talk about a lot of things 2A, but mostly gun laws, policy, and what's going on in the culture when it comes to the culture, right? Because we're doing it for the culture.
Yes.
When it comes to the Second Amendment and all things self-defense, not just the Second Amendment. Well, that's self-defense. Anyways, you know what I'm talking about.
It's
not
all the
just
same
all
thing.
guns. Yeah. Not just guns, even though it's primarily that. But so today we have a really awesome show for you guys. I am really excited. I love it when we can do shows where we're learning as well.
Right.
Because most of the time we know everything. So we're just like, yeah, let's just do it for the audience. And no, just kidding. But no, really, I'm really excited to talk to our guest that will be coming up in a few minutes. Her name is Sarah Cade. If you don't know about her, read up on her now. I've also been very vocal about this interview, so I really hope that you guys came with your well thought out, very intellectually stimulating questions. Yes. Okay, or preguntas for you, for the the Hispanic crowd watching. And I do say that because you know what, Nina. I don't know if you have heard, but I am going to be the Second Amendment director for Benvenido.
Yeah,
which is it's not just for Hispanic people, but they're branching out to everybody basically, just to show that there are different people across the spectrum when it comes to being a Hispanic and being in politics. So I am really excited to be a part of that group, and thank you for joining me in that journey of trying to empower their women. Benvenido. So yeah, I'm going to be doing that. But I digress. So before we get back to what we're talking about, we're going to do a little bit of, there's a lot of things that have been happening the last couple of weeks.
Right. Last week was not a good week for us to miss. And admittedly, that was my fault. I had a cooking class scheduled actually from months and months ago that I couldn't get a refund on. So I'm sorry about that.
We're struggling here, guys.
But we have plenty of news stories to talk about. So which one do we want to start with?
Yeah, well, I think the elephant in the room is that we have to talk about what happened in Denver.
Yes.
Which is probably the latest news that we've had. So, or not latest, rather the one that we had far, you know what I'm talking about. I'm tired, guys. Okay, so we had just like a week or so ago. So can you fill in everyone on that, Nina?
Yeah, I can give at least a Reader's Digest version, especially because the shooting happened in the county where I grew up, and actually within the school district where I grew up. So essentially, there were two individuals who went and did a shooting at, I think it was Highlands Ranch High School. No, excuse me. It was at the STEM school, yeah. But it's in Highlands Ranch, which is a little city in Douglas County. And I think that there were 5 people injured and 1 fatality, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And they have been going through the legal proceedings. They were supposed to have their bond set, I think, last Friday. But that ended up getting postponed again. So I don't think their bond has been officially set unless it happened today and I wasn't able to see the news story. But it's kind of an interesting thing because it's not really in line with the narrative that you would expect, which is why, in my opinion, that it's kind of disappeared from the media cycle. But it actually it was like a boy who really didn't like Trump and a transgender student who committed this act of violence. So they're going through the legal process right now in Douglas County, and we'll just have to keep up with that and follow it. I'm certainly going to keep following it. I'll be curious to see what kind of bond is set for them. We had girls who were planning a school shooting in that same courtroom when I was a law clerk, and their bond was set if I remember correctly, their bond was set at $1 million, and I think that was with the intention that they could not post bail and get out. So these people actually, or these students actually committed the school shooting. So I can't imagine that they would be treated with more leniency than that. But we're going to follow up on it. Obviously, it's horrible, and I'm so sorry to everyone who was impacted by that and who, you know, suffered injuries. And it's just so sad that this happens in our state, and it happens anywhere. Really.
Yeah, no, really, it does. And yeah, you're right that it just disappeared from the media. No one's really talking about it. I mean, maybe it was mostly even just more of the like the ones that you would probably consider more conservative, Fox News, The Blaze, that whole conglomerate of news organizations that tend to focus on those type of issues in general, the pro-gun issues, because there are several different facets to this. One, it didn't kind of meet the narrative, the stereotype that they wanted to. I mean, a transgender student, and then also someone who was anti-Trump, right? Not some pro-Trump, gun-toting, mental illness history type of guy or white male, whatever, that they want to perpetuate the narrative. So when I heard first they said it was female, and then someone was like, oh, she's transgender or whatever. The female thing, I was like, oh goodness, because, as empowered and everything, and as more women get into this, with gun ownership and stuff like that, especially that one is more alarming when we hear that. Not saying just because they're transgender that it changes things, or it's just like it's less alarming. Obviously, it's just interesting of like this. I hate to say it, like this new generation because there's a new generation of people of mass shootings, this is not considered a mass shooting. The FBI considers mass shootings 3 or more people, 3 or more fatalities. But regardless of the case, one of the people, so unfortunately the person that did die was Kendrick Castillo, and he was set to graduate in 3 days. He was a senior, set to graduate in 3 days. And then another young man, he's actually going to be a Marine after he graduates college. And I remember watching his live video on Fox News, and he changed his Instagram bio to I refuse to be a victim. And he was just, you could tell he was not like, he was refusing to be a victim. And he was spreading that message because in that time period, him and Kendrick were rolling on the floor with this guy, this one of the guys who had the firearm, because there were 2 handguns. It wasn't a rifle, it was 2 handguns. Trying to take it right away from him. And that's what he was saying, is like, basically my mentality was that I'm not going to just run away. I have to do something. And it's such a powerful message because you don't see that. Right. They don't want you to have that, narrative. And I think that's why they're not going to get any play. They're not going to get anything. And just remind me of Santa Fe in the shooting, because so many of the people in Texas afterwards, obviously they weren't. I mean, there were some, I'm sure, that you changed their mind about guns and were anti-gun, but for the most part, they understood that this was not the gun. It was the person. And so, they didn't give him any play either, which is sad.
That's true. It also reminded me of, I don't know if you guys even remember, but there actually was a shooting that occurred at YouTube's headquarters. There was a girl who went in.
Yes, you're right.
She was like a vegan liberal something, and went in and was trying to shoot up YouTube. And that also disappeared from the media. And it's not that, I actually don't think we should dwell on it so much that we glorify the shooters, because I think that's dangerous too.
That's very true.
But I do think that there's a bit of a double standard there, and I don't know, it's just so sad that this keeps happening. We got to foster a culture of appreciating and loving life, because people don't cherish life, people don't respect life, and so that's why, I don't know, this kind of tragedy keeps happening.
And then another thing with those students, they also, so they had a vigil right after that, and then
that's right.
And they said, there were these Democrat politicians that are anti-gun, just anti-gun in general. I'm not just saying for the Democrat, but it was just anti-gun, and they were trying to push this narrative of, or would really just push in general at that event, that they wanted to push a whole gun control policy thing afterwards, or media attack, and the kids weren't having it. They actually walked out.
Yeah, they
walked
said
out.
they said that they didn't like having the tragedy of their lives being used for political purposes. What a shock. I was proud of those students. They're young, but they still they knew that they were being used for a political agenda. So
right. And also, if it was a pro-gun person, like at that time, it just was not, it wasn't, it wasn't the time to say anything. I mean, especially at that event. I mean, come on.
At the Vigil,
right?
Poor
come
taste.
on.
Poor taste.
And that's the thing is, what we see is we always see the anti-gun side. They always seem to have, they get leniency of being able to talk about stuff like that first. They get to start the conversation. Okay, now it's enough time, like a day, like 24 hours. Now we can talk about it. And then the students were like, no. This is our life, you can't do that. And this is here in Denver. Okay. So we're not even talking about Texas or whatever.
No.
So yeah. So don't even, but yeah, that was really interesting. But another part of the news, like more recent. So today I was watching this live. Fox News does lives on the Democratic candidates, and it was about Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas on the town hall. And you know what? It was really interesting because, again, like you guys know, like I used to be a Democrat, and I think I'm thankful that I used to be that and then became a Republican instead of just always being a Republican or a conservative, because I really do feel like I can see both sides, and I can see what worked in the Democratic Party side. And what works is that they know how to tell their story. They know how to relate with other people and bring them in. And as many people love to talk about how the emotional side doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. That's not true. Okay. First of all, it's just not true. So it does matter. And they are very effective in messaging when it comes to getting people to relate to them in their story. And, Elizabeth Warren was talking about her public school teacher background and how she went to a public school with she had a daughter or a child already. And she paid her way through law school and all that stuff. And I was listening. I was like, oh, okay. It definitely makes me at least relate to her better than what I was relating to before. And a lot of the Fox News comments, like just reading the comments, I was just like, you guys better, you guys need to calm down, because these are the people that all the time that they like, oh my goodness, I didn't see that coming. Like, there was no way they're at 4% at the polls. Like, yeah, but remember that the biggest lobbying group in America, it's not the NRA, whatever, it's actually the public school lobby. Okay. And the unions. Yeah, the teachers unions. And the public school lobby, the teachers unions are, for so many different reasons, they're really effective. But if they put their money and support their teachers and the people who volunteer behind her, I'm not saying that she's going to win, but I definitely don't think you should dismiss her. So it was just really interesting to see that some people just completely forget that part exists and it's important. So
right. I do think that there's a lot of people who, because Trump did win in 2016, they think that he's got it in the bag. And don't get me wrong, if Elizabeth Warren does become the Democratic candidate, I think that Trump will win. The whole Pocahontas thing, the whole DNA test thing was such a train wreck. I just don't know if she can recover from that. But I do think it's important to remember that the Democratic candidates, while in a lot of our opinions, they're kind of crazy and they have policy positions that I just can't even fathom. One of these people is going to become the candidate, and they're going to have the backing of really powerful, wealthy groups like the teachers unions. And
so true.
Even Elizabeth Warren, would have that kind of financial backing, and that does matter.
It really does. So with that, I'm going to, do we have any questions or anything?
Oh, I should check the questions. Let's see here. Let's see. True to God for Life says, great to see you ladies together once again. Looking forward to this program. Thank you. We're happy to be together again. He also says, the scripture says the love of many shall wax cold. Unfortunately, we see that happening. Maybe I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that. Perhaps it's that even though we're trying to fight for like peace and all of that, we still end up with mass shootings like this. Oh. I'm not sure. Maybe you could clarify. Brett Ralston says teachers unions and then vomiting emoji. Yeah, that sounds about right. And then David Blackard says good evening. So that's not really a question. But,
it's totally okay. You're allowed to make statements and questions. Thanks, guys.
We'll respond.
Yeah. All right. So we're about to invite Sarah Cade. So before we do, I'm going to give her a little background on her. And so Sarah Cade is a healthcare professional, a recreational shooter, and a team leader for the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus. She works to help depolarize the gun debate by sharing a positive pro-gun message centered on liberal values. So, Nina, I'm really excited about this one.
Me too.
So we're going to invite Sarah, and she'll come on.
And while we're waiting for her to get in, feel free to ask questions in the live chat. We might not see them right when you do it, but we'll circle and look at them before we say goodbye to Sarah to make sure that if you guys have questions that you can ask her before she leaves.
So. Yeah, and this is totally not an ad, but I am wearing Alexa Athletica right now. And I will say it's the trench coat jacket in Princess Warrior Blue. And I do feel like a Princess Warrior, okay? I have not watched Game of Thrones, so no Game of Thrones references. Thank you.
Yeah, please don't spoil it. I had to work all last night and like today. Like I haven't seen it. Twitter's been awful for that.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine. Oh my goodness, I watched like 5 episodes of Game of Thrones, and then I had to pay for each episode because I didn't want to buy HBO Go or whatever. So
that probably was more than
I know.
HBO Go,
probably. But you know what? I get to own those episodes. Okay, what do you guys?
Those 5.
I get those 5 episodes that I've like. Really, the last one was like the sister and brother having sex, and that's all I follow. And I was like, you know what? Probably not great for my spiritual life. Stop. Yeah, probably not great. So
I should have stopped then. No.
Yeah, I know. It's like, do you remember how many times has that happened? You're like, which time was which one? So yeah,
we do have more stories if we're waiting for her.
Yeah,
I don't know if you want
Sarah, if you're watching us, just join when you can, or if you don't find the invite, just let us know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so well, so actually a lot of stuff are happening in Philadelphia right now. I don't know what's going on.
We should talk about Philadelphia.
Yeah, Philadelphia is an interesting place, especially with the Second Amendment, especially with even the race. I think several of the Democratic candidates are there right now. I'm not really sure why, but there is one candidate that is worth mentioning. Not a Democrat, a Libertarian, actually.
Yeah, he's wonderful.
Yeah. Okay. But he is wonderful. Maj Toure. So he is running for city council in Philly, in Philadelphia. So, which is always funny. I always like Philadelphia seems long enough to be a state name. So I'm always it's like, oh yeah, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Because like 2 different places. Pennsylvania, like I think like Amish country. And then I think Philly, like Philadelphia, I think Maj Toure. So I'm just like, Amish, Maj Toure.
And Philly is, I don't know, too hardcore to be like Amish. But
I don't know. Those like I'm thinking about Amish Paradise right now. That's just me. But okay.
But if you guys don't know who Maj Toure is, he
Preach's sister.
Yeah, you really should look into him on YouTube, Twitter, all of that. He's great. He preaches often about being a solutionary instead of just a reactionary. And I think that's really important because he tries to build bridges with people instead of just trying to point fingers or say, we should be doing things one way, and like a lot of us libertarians just, oh, the government's bad. It's like, we get that. Like, what's the actual solution? And he's great about that, and he's very reasonable, super articulate, makes the points about Second Amendment issues, especially as they pertain to the Black community, very, very well. So, you know, all about Maj Toure. If you're in Philly, please support his cause. Even if you're not in Philly, you know, you should support Maj, because he would be better than, I mean, I don't even know who else is running, but I assure you that he would be better than any of the other candidates that are up for city council in Philadelphia. So
yeah, he's a firecracker, and he's awesome because he just speaks his mind. He just says what probably a lot of us in the gun community are saying, because he has his own organization. I think that's a power in that, is that people obviously you know, relate to him and follow him, and he's a leader in his own right, and it's needed because it's just so many. There's so much politics right now, even though he's running for office, but there's so much politics right now when it comes to the Second Amendment, and that they're bad type of politics, right? Not the fact that you're actually like, you know, talking about the policy and the stuff that actually needs to change. Is just who's going to be this board member, who's going to be that.
Right.
Okay.
And we should have mentioned his organization is Black Guns Matter.
Oh yeah.
And you guys probably have heard of that before, but you might not have heard his name. So yeah, Maj Toure, Black Guns Matter.
Not Black Lives Matter.
Black Guns.
Black Guns Matter.
I actually do want a shirt though that says
all one.
I have one that says Black Guns Matter, but I do want one that says All Guns Matter.
There is an All Guns Matter one. Have you seen that?
Oh no.
Oh yeah, Brenna. Oh, speaking of Brenna. Brenna Spencer actually has that. It's on her. I don't know if you guys know Brenna Spencer. She's the college student, blonde college student from last year that went viral because she had a Women for Trump shirt, and she had her gun, and people were triggered by that.
As usual.
Yeah, of course. So I think people are just triggered because she had great abs. That's what I really think it is. But other than that, Brenna is actually going to be. She's an amazing human being. Really solid on the Second Amendment. She's continued that platform since then, so she's doing great things. She's actually going to be our ambassador, one of our brand ambassadors for Empowered, since she understands the gun rights or women's rights message so well. So we have Brenna Spencer, but then we also have Savannah Lindquist. So she just went to DC and testified because she's actually a sexual assault survivor. Left her college, actually from Philly, Temple University, went to Virginia because she was assaulted on campus there. And so check out empowered_2A, our Instagram, to see that video, or Gun Owners of America. They actually did something on her, a whole video with her testifying, and it is so powerful. There's just so many young women who understand the message, and who knew are activists because of that. So really proud of her. So Savannah will also be one of our ambassadors as well. So amazing people on board. But
yeah, we're very proud to have so many amazing women who agree with us and with this message, and who perceive that our right to defend ourselves is in danger, because we as women especially need to protect that. So the more women who are interested, if you want to be an ambassador, you know, you should email us.
Yeah. Should have emailed us. Yeah. Or if you want to be a state chair, we still have several positions open. But you just email us and we can definitely see if that state is open. But we have like I said before, we have over 35 girls already who are ready to be state chairs. So it's gonna be awesome. And I'm really excited. I'm also afraid to say which states we're looking for still. Sienna, our amazing executive assistant, Sienna from Northern Arizona University, she knows all that. So Sienna, if you're watching as well, let me know. You're like, well, you're useless. I'm like, yes, I am. Because she probably tells me all the time. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. It's like, and she's like, probably like, there's more than 35 girls now. Like, okay. Forgive us.
We can't know everything.
Yeah.
And we are sorry that we haven't been able to connect with Sarah yet. I think she might be having some technical difficulties.
Yeah, I think she said she's on the wrong browser. So usually she just pops up, like what happened with Amy. Be like, oh, okay, there she is, like a little box. But so I'm sure
We actually do have questions for her from the live chat too. So,
okay. I also did promise her that we are going to take the most. Okay, just know. Okay, guys, just be careful with your questions. Okay. We're starting a series called "Not All Gun Girls Are Conservatives," because in the gun world, we know that's a fact.
It's just true.
It's true. So I already know when I posted about it, there were several people who went straight into the attacking mode. That's why we're having a conversation, because I don't feel like we're having enough of this type of conversation with real people talking to them. So I'm really interested to hear your questions, but just know we're not even gonna give you time of day if you're just gonna be ridiculous.
Yeah,
so,
or if you're really rude.
Exactly. I mean, and then the comments, that's like I said, if you're just stating, statements, that's fine. But as long as they're
what we could do is we could talk about some of the statistics we found with Democrat gun ownership. Because we were going to talk about that with her, but we could talk about it with the audience at least, so they have the knowledge. Because you might be surprised to find out that a lot of Democrats actually do own guns. It might not be the majority, but it certainly is not a situation where all Democrats are anti-gun. In fact, I had an employer who was very much a Democrat and very much hated Trump, but loved the NRA and was a lifetime member of the NRA. So, and it really used to be more so that way in this country, where we would have overlap between Republicans and Democrats on some issues, especially issues that were, Bill of Rights related. Those kind of would have an overlap. But we do see people getting more and more polarized. But there was a poll from forever ago, 2005, that showed that about a third of Democrats were either gun owners or lived with a gun in their house. But that was from 2005, and I know Antonia had a statistic that was more recent.
Yeah, Pew Research actually does whole. I would strongly recommend just typing in Pew Research gun ownership study, because they have a whole report on that. And for Democrat owners, they said still that Republicans definitely outnumber Democrats when it comes to gun ownership. But 16% of Democrats, self-proclaimed Democrats, are gun owners. Mm-hmm. So,
and that was more recent. That was 2017, I think, that study.
Yes, this is 2017. So yeah, this is not something like, and I talk about this all the time, that Black women are the fastest growing Democratic group. We still know that majority of Black women are still, sorry. You're like, what is it? What are the majority majority of Democratic women are Black women. Of gun owners are Black women. So yeah, it's definitely something that just makes sense that not all of them are Republican.
Right. So to the extent that all of those Black women are staying in the Democratic Party, that percentage of Democrats that owns guns is just going to keep going up and up. And that was another study I saw, which does make sense, which is that since Trump has been elected, in particular, Democrats have been buying guns more, which is interesting because there's a lot of Democrats pushing for more gun control since Trump has been elected, which was always a little nonsensical to me. I mean, it would always be, just because gun control is nonsensical to me. But at the same time, there are a bunch of people who are worried that he's a tyrannical type dictator, and that's how they're trying to protect themselves, is by getting more guns. Who knew that the response to perceiving a tyrannical government was to arm yourself? Anyway.
You're gonna have to keep this going, because we're having technical difficulties.
Yeah, which I can if you want.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think that part of the issue too is, at least in our country in general, is the assumption that if someone is of a different political party, that they can't agree with you on key issues. And I do think that we all should work to have, at minimum, the principles of the Bill of Rights become kind of universally accepted again, because right now there's a branch of the left that they're attacking the First Amendment, they're attacking the Second Amendment. They seem like they've given up on the Fourth Amendment entirely. So I just think that it's important for us to to try to unite on these principles that really should unite all of us who are Americans. And that's one thing we've lost, is our identity as Americans, not just as, oh, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, but I'm an American first, and then I might have policy positions that are different than some of my fellow Americans. But ultimately, I believe in liberty, and I believe in, the power of an individual to have self-determination. And I just think that we've lost that. And we also have lost, I don't know, just so much civility. And I know Twitter doesn't help that. Like, maybe the whole social media thing is what's driving some of this. But I think it's important that we try to focus on the real issues, which is that we're losing essentially our Bill of Rights. So, and Antonia's typing, things are happening.
Yeah, thanks for being with us, guys.
I'm gonna just peek at the live chat here while we're doing this.
Okay.
Someone says Alexo, smiley faces with hearts, got the green version of that jacket. So cute.
Oh, yes, I saw that, and I didn't see that till after I bought this. And it was also, oh, by the way, this is on sale right now, so that's why I got it. And then I was like, oh, well, only this color is on sale. And then Amy was doing her pop-up shop in Kansas just like a few days ago, and she was like, oh, the olive is also on sale. And I was like,
of course.
I just bought, but it's okay. I love this one. So it's all good.
Yeah, I feel that's always how it happens. The stuff always goes on sale right after I buy it.
Yes.
Let's see. Do you, Antonia, have plans to come to California to share the two-way message, even with the anti-wasteland here? Oh, I bet you meant anti-two-way wasteland here.
Oh, I don't have anything like set in stone right now. I just know a lot of people who want me to come speak. Thank you, guys. I do want to. I've been there several times. Love California. But no, not anytime soon, unless someone asks me, hey, to come over there and speak. So if you want to set up something, I am down to come over there. I know the people from California Rifle Association, Heather, shout out to Heather over there. She's doing amazing things with them. So the last time I spoke over there was at this San Diego University, California University college. So yeah. But I would love to come back. So
sure. Let's see. Second Liberty Gun Club says, I know many pro 2A Dems. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. They're really... I feel like they've been forced to kind of be quiet or like not speak their mind as much, but they're out there. It's not like all of a sudden the people who loved their guns just were like, oh, you know what? I don't care anymore. I'm just going to give them up. Like, I don't buy that. I think any Democrat that was like pro 2A probably still is.
Yeah, because the whole blue dog Democrat, I mean, that's part of it. The people who were pro-gun, I've also heard that those people are dwindling, that you don't see many blue dogs anymore. So yeah, I don't know.
The extremist leftists are pushing them out though. That's the thing. Like, even if they wanted to stay, they're kind of getting kicked out.
Yeah, that is part of my story. It wasn't the pro-gun issue, because I didn't become pro-gun until even after I was, in the liberty movement and changing and having like the wrestling with that whole policy issue. But the big one for me at first was the pro-life issue, because I was pro-life when I was a Democrat. I mean, my family, I think I told you guys, my family was Roman Catholic. Pro-life issue is huge for Roman Catholics, at least it should be. But that was the one thing I was like, no. So I was kind of quiet on it until I had to make a decision of actually interning for Republican or a Democrat. And I was just like, well, I'm just going to look up somebody who's pro-life and a Democrat. I'm sure there's somebody out there. And I was, so young, so naive.
But that's the thing, though. There actually used to be pro-life Democrats, too. That was a thing. But the abortion agenda has just been so powerful in the Democratic Party that I don't know. They've gotten pushed out too.
And the next wave I think I see now with Democratic Party is the fact that you have to say you're a capitalist now to be a Democrat. Like, I'm a Democrat as a capitalist. Like, don't kill me.
I know, they're like scared to say that they're in favor of capitalism.
I don't think billionaires suck. Like, that's the new wave.
I think entrepreneurs do good things. It's like, oh gosh.
Crazy talk. What are you doing? So yeah, that's going to be the next thing. So it seems like it's those blue dog Democrats are, bald eagle like type of like special status.
Oh, and this was actually something we thought about talking about earlier, but we didn't, which is Avril Fan 1 says, 2 queens, vote Tulsi. I'm sorry.
Who said that?
Avril, someone named Avril Fan, but or excuse me, yeah. But no, I'm a libertarian. I appreciate her anti-war stance, but in terms of her economic policy, I mean, she is just so like socialist leftist. Like, I just can't. No. Her domestic policy is awful. Like, there's more. I mean, I appreciate that the president, foreign policy really is actually a very important issue for the president because, they're the commander in chief, so that's important. But I think that on the whole, I'm just never a one issue voter, and that would be a one issue vote for me. I don't know about you, Antonia, but
and with the gun issue.
Oh, well, that's the other thing too. Yeah, I mean, Tulsi is in favor of massive gun control as well. So, any libertarians out there, please just, I don't know. I support her anti-war stuff, but she's not. If Rand Paul wasn't libertarian enough, she's not. I stand by that.
Oh.
You know what I mean? Like, seriously though, I just don't think that people who did a purity test for Rand Paul but think that Tulsi is okay. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Let's see. Brett says 100% American first, liberty, individualism, key here. Then other issues can be sorted out. Yes. I don't know what you think about that. You're still trying to get Sarah in the stream.
We are going to make this work because I'm really excited about this.
Let's see. Antonia looks gorgeous. Love from Croatia.
Oh,
she does look gorgeous today. You're right.
Okay, so. And he's like, hate the attitude though.
And very cool that someone's watching live in Croatia. That was Avril Fan again. I would love to go to Croatia. It's like at the top of my list of European countries to see. So I'm very jealous that you're there. I'd like to see it myself. 2 items are afraid to come out of the gun closet. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was David Bach. Yeah, I really think that's the case. And I mean, it makes sense because even Republicans are scared to talk about some of this stuff. And so if you're a Democrat, I can just imagine. And if you had like a very leftist circle of friends, that if you were trying to be like, well, I actually enjoy like shooting, or I like that I can carry my gun for self-defense, you might lose friends quickly. So yeah, I think they are scared. Brian Vogt says, Antonia, any chance of you going on the Candace Owens show?
I don't know. She has to invite me.
Yeah, that'd probably be a prereq to that.
Like, hey, I'm just coming on your show. Is that okay?
But, she just...
Is it working?
Oh my god! We did it!
Did that last one work? I guess it did.
That's so random. One second, let me just...
Look how cute she is.
I know your camera is awesome.
Oh, thank you.
That's your business, isn't it, though?
It is, yeah. I was just gonna say, this is like literally my job. Okay. Is everything working? Can you see and hear me?
Yeah, me too. Thank you, audience, for hanging in.
Yes, thank you for being patient. That's funny, Ellie. You sent the invite to 2 different Gmails and nothing, and then you send it to a Hotmail Microsoft address, and it worked.
Gmail, do you hear that?
I don't know, Gmail. Anyways, thank you so much for having me, and thanks for being patient with my technical difficulties. But here I am. Happy to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. Woohoo! We'll get to it. Oh my goodness. So, Sarah, can you tell us? I gave him the bio that you sent, but can you talk a little bit about your background? A little bit about your background, and we'll go from there.
Well, so I started shooting, wow, time kind of flies. I think it was probably maybe 7 years ago, give or take. My mom and I were like looking for a family bonding activity, and we're like, let's go shooting. And we kind of had this idea, like, this is our right. We're, as Americans, this is our right. We have the right to own and shoot firearms. Let's just try it because we can. And so we went out and took a beginner gun class, and we had such a great time that we went back for more. And within a week, we had both purchased our first guns. And I started looking towards competition because I wanted something to improve my marksmanship. And so I started competing. I did a little bit of IDPA, a little bit of USPSA. And the more I got into guns and firearms culture, the more I realized what I had, and that I didn't want to lose it. And so I became kind of by default, I guess, just became a Second Amendment advocate.
Awesome.
That's how it tends to go, right? Because
Right? Yeah.
these days, if you own a gun, if you like shooting, you end up being a Second Amendment advocate.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, out of necessity, I think it's like come for the fun, stay for the liberty.
Yeah.
And once you have something that's worth protecting, it changes your outlook a little bit, and it makes you a little more motivated to want to protect those rights. So
yeah, awesome.
Yeah, that's where I came from.
So why do you think, and I know that this is something that you probably get asked a lot, so being a Democrat or being someone more of the liberal persuasion, why do you think that it's worth protecting? Like, what do you love about it?
Oh boy. Well, so I'm big on individual rights, increasing the power of the individual versus the power of the state. So I like the philosophy of the Second Amendment, just on its own. And then on a personal level, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit from my friend Annette Evans, who's got some beautiful blog articles about this concept. But basically, I believe in my own bodily autonomy to the point that I'm willing to protect it at the end of a gun. And so after kind of a lot of soul searching on that, that's what I came to as a personal philosophy too, is that I'm willing to protect myself. I think my life is valuable and worth protecting, all the way, up to and including lethal force if necessary. So that's kind of what drew me into the personal philosophy of Second Amendment advocacy.
Yeah. So was there ever a time where you were anti-gun, where you were just and then you changed your mind before even within that process of you going with your mom to the gun range? Or was it something that you just didn't really think too much about?
I was pretty gun agnostic before I joined the community myself. I didn't really have a strong opinion one way or another. I was probably like a lot of people out there. And if you would have asked me, hey, don't you think it's a good idea to have background checks? Or don't you think red flags are a good idea? I would have said, oh, well, yeah, I guess that sounds like a good idea. But I had really, my personal belief is that unless you have done enough research to at least have some level of expertise on a certain subject matter, then you really have no business forming a political opinion about it. Mm-hmm. So I have very few political opinions, actually, as most of us should, because so many of them are highly specialized, especially kind of in this day and age. It's really impossible to be an expert on everything. So I pick and choose. So if you would have asked me before I started shooting, what I thought about gun issues, I really probably wouldn't have had much to say at all. And it was really only after I started developing not going to say I'm the expert, but after I started developing a level of competence and knowledge on this topic, that's when I started to really solidify my political opinion.
Mm-hmm. All right. So you, like you said, you're self-proclaimed Democrat and everything like that. I can only imagine that your other fellow Democrats are not on board with you. Can you tell about that experience of you, I guess, going from just shooting at the range with your mom and then being vocal about what you believe when it comes to that issue?
Well, so there's the larger political sphere, and then there's my personal circle of friends. And amongst my personal circle, they're all like pretty carefully selected to be people who are open-minded and people who can debate rationally. And so those types of people tend to not really have a problem when you come at them with a knowledgeable opinion. So I really never had a problem in my personal circles. I had a few people be like, what do you want to do that for? And then I tell them what I love about it. And they're like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. Maybe it's not for me, but I can see why you like it. Or, maybe I don't agree with you on everything politically, but I can see why you advocate for what you do for the Second Amendment. So I get a lot of that reaction. There's also like the keyboard warrior, you know, like internet trolls. People that don't know you well are often really quick to form an opinion on what you do or don't do. But honestly, those opinions are irrelevant.
Very true. Very true. I agree. I remember that same process, and people would ask me the same thing of after my PragerU video of like, "Oh my goodness, you don't have any more friends." And like, actually, the friends that I realized, at least, I mean, I had to realize this. My actual friends are the ones who did not agree still, but they're my friends because they care about me. They weren't like, you know, I'm staying for your political views. Like, okay, that's kind of weird. You know, why would you do that? You're not my friend because of that. For all the other great reasons. So that makes total sense to me that, you know, the ones that if you are an open-minded person, that you're going to attract other open-minded people who are going to stick around because they're open-minded.
Right. And for as far as my role in the movement, I feel like I have a niche. And I don't really care. I shouldn't say I don't care. I do care, but I don't really concern myself with what happens outside of my niche. So what I feel my role is in the movement is to kind of talk across the aisle, to put out a positive message to people that don't normally hear a positive message about the Second Amendment in their own terms, right? So like, I speak from values that I hold, which are values that a lot of traditionally liberal people hold. And they don't really hear that pro-gun argument spoken in those terms very often. So that's my role right there. And I'm not out to convince like anti-gun zealots. Like those people can't be convinced, and they're not my concern. I'm here to talk to the people who can be reached.
Right.
That's awesome.
And you know, I told my fiance that you were going to be on the show, and I asked if he had any questions for you, because he's actually he's a liberal Democrat himself, but he's more of a classical liberal. Like he's not all the way on the kind of like far left, more extreme spectrum. But his question was, why do you think it's so hard for so many people of the liberal persuasion to understand why a lot of us care about the Second Amendment? Because it seems like a lot of liberalism is about freedom and bodily autonomy, like you talked about. So why do you think there's this disconnect happening?
That question is very insightful, and I think it gets to the root of like what I'm trying to do in life. So what my theory on this is that when you talk about reaching somebody, kind of reaching somebody where they're at and changing minds, not necessarily you're out to change their mind, but you're just out to help them understand your point of view. There's a couple things that get in the way. One of those is just team identities. So if you're on team blue and somebody from team red says anything at all, just anything, like, oh, the sky's awfully blue today, your first instinct is not to trust that, or to not, your first instinct is to pick it apart rather than finding ways to agree. You'll find ways to disagree. And so I think really what gets in the way is not even so much the philosophy, not even a lot of times the policy. I think it's really more the team identities than anything else. And I see that very strongly on both sides of the aisle. So it's not a uniquely blue or red thing. I think it sometimes manifests a little differently, but it's totally a common human trait.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. So, okay, I don't know if you want to, I'm sure we have our questions for you. But I have a lot of questions myself. But okay, so would you say that that's if you're looking at we're looking at team red, team blue, right? Just for the sake of this question. Would you say that the pro-gun issue or pro-Second Amendment issue is the only issue on team blue that you would maybe relate with team red or whatever, or not? You know what I'm saying? Like, basically, is that the only issue that is different, or do you have other issues that you think are more classically liberal?
You're talking about just for me personally. So like, what issues do I associate with team red or team blue?
Yeah. Well, what other issues do you think would be considered classically liberal? That would kind of stray away from what people associate as a Democrat, as a modern Democrat.
At least
these days, yeah.
Yeah, and it's tough to say because that's such a flexible construct anyway, that it's kind of depends on who you ask, I suppose. But I would say for me, like the most the gun issue right now is such a strong wedge issue because it just conjures this image of like the gun-toting hillbilly that's like racist and the white male that wants to oppress everybody, right? And
Just like
so
the three of us, right?
yeah, right, I know. But it's like
Very white male.
it's like if you start talking about gun issues, that's kind of like the default assumption that you're fighting. And it just like instantly it just conjures that for people. And I think that's kind of one of the bigger things we're fighting is this issue is such a powerfully divisive issue. I think the more we can break that down, the more progress we'll make long term for the Second Amendment. But there's a lot of pressure that's kind of building it back up because it's so valuable as a political wedge. I kind of have this theory where outrage is currency. So the more you drive outrage, the more clicks, the more shares, the more money you get, the more donations to your political party. So it's very profitable to be angry, to sell anger, to sell outrage, and to, own the other side. It's not about coming to the table to understand the other side. But no, you just, shove in their face how right you are and how wrong they are. And everybody cheers for you and claps and everybody gets a little further apart and goes their own separate ways. So there's a lot of outside pressure that kind of goes against everything I'm trying to do.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I don't really know the answer, honestly, to break that down. But to get back a little more to your question, aside from the gun issue, anything else that kind of hedges on Team Red? I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty blue on every other issue except for guns. I'm trying to think of one that I'm not. I mean, if you go anywhere near like pro-choice, immigration, war, a little bit economics. Economics, I think, can kind of go both ways depending on who you talk to and how you talk to them.
Yeah.
But let's see, what else have we got? Environment, drug legalization, criminal justice reform. I think a lot of those issues, for me, I tend to lean pretty blue on everything else. So I don't really hedge into the red on much. But I kind of suggest that if anyone has an issue that they do hedge into the other team on, just go hang out with the other team and learn and like meet some people there. Because if you can find one thing to agree on, all of a sudden you can make friends across the aisle. It's
so true.
kind of makes things universal. So
yeah. And I do have some questions from the live chat here.
Sure.
Here we go. Let's see, guys.
So No Shaheen says, what's a pro to a left-leaning Democrat to do in 2020?
Ha! my immediate answer was not constructive, but it is most definitely, it's like an uphill battle, I tell you.
Yeah. Do you think that Antonia went to go grab the power cord? She'll be right back.
Oh yeah, no problem. No problem.
Thanks for making it discreet. Trying to make it discreet.
Well, it comes to me and you are
now.
Do you think that there's any 2020 candidates that are good on this issue on the Democratic side?
So here's my personal theory. So as someone who my values, wait, let me back up a step. So my party affiliation is based on either policy or values, right? And in a lot of cases, I kind of align with whoever matches my values the most closely. I don't always agree with policy, which is easy to say because I don't agree with all the policies of any party ever created unless it's a party of one. So as far as policy goes, I'm not going to stray like too far into that. But as far as values go, it's kind of a tough world out there if you're a left-leaning person who does prioritize gun rights, but also is concerned about other issues. And I think what I do and what I kind of recommend people do is a couple things. I'll identify what is vulnerable to abuse at that particular time. So, for example, mostly I work at the state level. I'm from Minnesota. So in Minnesota, we had a Republican-controlled House and Senate for a good couple years there. So as a pro 2A Democrat, it's pretty safe for me to vote for, during that time to vote for a liberal governor, because there's going to be now gridlock between the parties.
Right.
So as someone who is like supremely concerned with just a couple of major issues that are on opposite sides of the spectrum, I can kind of vote for gridlock and say, okay, this person has the power to harm this. If they have, if we have straight Republican control, it's going to compromise this, this, and this. But if we have straight Democrat control, it's now going to compromise this, this, and this. So for me, I mean, if I see, okay, now the House and Senate are Democrat controlled, I might actually, not saying I will or I won't, but I might consider voting for a Republican governor to create a little more gridlock there in that case, just so that they can't harm the things I care about. But it's totally a case-by-case thing. It depends on the year, depends on the scope of, are you looking at state level? Are you looking at national level? As far as presidents go, that one's that one is a little tricky, because it's like, I know a lot of people voted for Trump thinking that he would be pro-gun, but he's actually been a huge threat to gun rights on a number of different levels. Everything from like kind of voicing some support for red flag stuff, whether or not he would follow through on that, we don't know. But I mean, the bump stock thing is another one. So it's like, on one hand, I don't feel like the presidential race matters as much as the state level races for your individual gun rights. But on the other hand, it does. So it's like, you got to really make that individual calculation for yourself. And everybody's going to be a little different. I don't judge anybody for what they're going to vote for. I'll just give them an argument that appeals to the values I find important. And if any of it resonates with them, great.
So what about the Libertarian Party? Have you thought about them?
Yeah.
Well, it's just like, it sounds more, I guess, because I think of classically liberal and then I think about those things.
Right.
Is it this really the economic issue, like you said before, that really keeps you from joining them? Or
yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, and so like they would be my second runner up if I decided to leave the Democrats. But the thing that keeps me from the Libertarian Party is basically, I do feel that government has a role to play in providing certain public services. Not saying that they are successfully providing those services well or efficiently, because clearly they're not doing the greatest job of that. But I do feel like they do have a role to provide, like, say, public schools, like a social safety net of some kind. Whatever that may be, whatever it looks like. I would like for it to be better, but it is what it is at the moment. So there's like certain things that I do want the government to do, which kind of hedges me out of the Libertarian Party. In a lot of cases, there are just occasionally some strong personalities in there that make it hard to stick around if you're anything less than strident.
You might be surprised how many people in the Libertarian Party love big government.
Really?
Well,
things have changed since last time I looked then.
I'm not saying that
Is there like, what does a moderate libertarian look like? Can I ask a question?
Yeah, that's true. I don't know if you had another one. I do have one from the live chat. So in your opinion, what's the best way to spread the philosophy of the Second Amendment in a way that it doesn't come off like a men's issue, or what else did they say, or a conservative issue?
That's another one these are really good questions. They're really cutting to the core of it. So, well, personally, I think the number one best thing you can do is take somebody shooting and don't talk about politics. Well,
we're done. That's it.
Yep,
okay, that's
done.
Yeah. Wow.
So here's why. So it's like, we have this idea that as political advocates, we want to change people's minds. We want to change their politics. But the best way we can do that is collectively on a grassroots level. So I'm not going to go to you, Antonia, and try to change your mind on one issue. Nope. I'm going to go to 10 people who don't know anything about guns, and I'm going to teach them just a little tiny bit. just a little bit each. And then each of those people is going to have a little bit more informed policy decisions than they did before. And if we all do that, that's going to spread and that's going to change things. So I'm really not so much concerned about changing one person's mind on one thing, but the more I can get information out without triggering people's defensiveness by setting them up for like a team red, team blue thing. So I'm not gonna talk politics, but the more I can kind of just educate and just set people up to be open, to listen, and to learn. I think that's the best thing we can do as Second Amendment advocates. Because really, like, these values really aren't going to change much throughout a person's life. I mean, they do evolve, especially if you're a young person growing up. But they're not going to change much. And so it's really not, you're not going to change somebody's values, but you can present your case in their values, I should say. Present your point of view in their values. And then you can move them a little bit on policy by doing that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, do you need like examples?
No, that's good.
Not necessarily.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
I have found that if I'm talking to someone who's more of the liberal persuasion, it's much better to go for the feminism issue in terms of the Second Amendment, because it's really hard for a feminist to tell me that I shouldn't have the right to defend myself.
Exactly.
It's really hard for them to do that.
Yep.
So,
that bodily autonomy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that would be my example, but it is hard. It's hard to bridge the gap, and I try to do it, but there are some people, like you said, who just don't. Their ears are closed.
Right.
So,
yep. And if you end up arguing with one of those people, what you just got to do is stop talking to them and start talking to their audience, because you're never going to change that zealot's mind, but there might be other people listening that are open to change. And if you speak with a positive message and you build rapport with people, you're going to reach those people. And that's a lot more important than just one random person here and there. So.
Love that. Yeah. So I got to speak with you a little bit. We actually met, I think we met for the first time 2 years ago at the Dallas.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I've known about you before that, but it was our first time meeting. And then we got to talk a little bit at this NRA convention, which was interesting. You got to tell me a little bit about, what you think about the NRA right now. And it was really interesting. So I just love for you. I'm sure that's I wouldn't say the elephant in the room. It's the donkey in the room, or the hedgehog in the room. I don't know.
I like that.
Yeah. So can you tell us more about what you think about the NRA? And because people don't usually associate, people don't associate gun owners with Democrats, but they definitely don't associate, NRA people with Democrats not now at least. So I would love for you to talk more about that and what your opinion is on
Yeah, so the NRA, man, that's a buzzword right there. Like, all you need to say is NRA and you instantly conjure up that like fat, angry redneck that wants to oppress all the brown people in the minds of your audience, because the NRA is like totally the boogeyman right now. But I think there's kind of some good and bad about him. One thing I feel the NRA does really well is they are pretty good at I have this political theory I call keeping your eye on the prize. So a lot of our gun rights have been lost incrementally over the years, right? But we can also get them back incrementally, and that's what people have been doing lately. And you can see that with like the spread of constitutional carry, the spread of like self-defense reform or stand your ground, and at the state level. So there are incremental improvements being made to our rights. And one thing the NRA does pretty well is they keep their eye on the prize. And rather than saying, we want constitutional carry or bust, and then the answer is, well, screw you guys, bust. They're like, well, we'll just take this little victory and this little victory and this little victory. And then 10 years from now, we're going to have constitutional carry. But they'll take an increment here and there. And a lot of people will refer to that as compromising. It's not. That's not the same thing. But the NRA is generally fairly good at that. So I'll give them credit where credit is due. unfortunately, they are stepping on their dick in the social and culture war like ridiculously badly, and that's just plain embarrassing. So I really wish they'd quit that. But it's like they've hitched their wagon to the Republican Party, which is understandable because they're getting most of their support from the Republican Party. But where they've gone wrong on that is they've made guns like a strictly conservative issue to the point where they're alienating everybody else. So people like me, who I'm like, I would say I'm a Second Amendment absolutist. And they can't get people like me to join that organization. I mean, that's a big problem.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that's just recently, or do you think that's just been a problem that's been happening for probably a couple of decades now?
It's been brewing for a while. I guess I haven't been around long enough to know. I've only been in this game for maybe, like 7 years, maybe 8, something like that. It's not super long. But since I've been politically active, they've been doing it. It feels like it's gotten worse maybe in the last like 3 years or so. But I'm not sure if that's really my perception or if that's reality or just my perception from watching it more closely now. But yeah, I mean, it's really in your face. It's like, oh yeah, the liberals and Antifa, they're gonna snatch your freedoms in the middle of the night, and they're, they're outside your home, and it's like, okay, let's like scale this back a little bit. The danger with it, I think, it's not only that they're alienating people like me, it's also that by doing that, they're allowing the Republicans to not have to do any damn work to get your vote. And that's, I think, the deeper problem. So not only are they alienating the base, especially the younger folks, but they're also making it so that you have no alternative to vote for if you care about gun rights. And once people know that, once these candidates know that, they're like, yeah, well, what are you going to do? Like, yeah, I didn't do anything to get constitutional carry passed this year, but so what? What are you going to do? Vote for the Democrat? So it makes them lazy.
And we definitely do see that in Texas. We see it now, especially of just, I mean, House leadership just being blatantly anti-gun. So yeah, and then we see in the state issue, but on the state level, but definitely we're gonna see on the federal level. I mean, we already see in the federal level with, like you said, the red flag laws, with that support, and then also with other things as well. So, I think.
Sorry, I lost camera. Do you still have audio?
Oh yes, you do.
Yeah, we still.
We're not gonna see your beautiful face.
Back on it. Might get a little warm.
Do we have any more questions?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. What do you think about quote unquote gun-free zones?
They're a joke.
I know, right?
They're a joke. Oh gosh. I mean, aside from like the obvious, I'm not going to go into the obvious talking point of, oh, hard criminals don't obey gun laws. I mean, yeah. I mean, they don't, but it's a dumb talking point. Sorry, I'm trying to refresh my camera as we're talking here.
Oh, it's okay. Let's see. Most quote feminists don't understand how guns can enhance their bodily autonomy. That's a good argument. I guess it's not a question.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that question?
It actually wasn't a question.
Sorry, I didn't hear the last part.
Another one.
Thanks geographies are though for the comment. Yeah, we appreciate you guys being active. So
let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure. Someone says, where can I find training? Which I do think is a good general question of if you're just starting to get into this. I'll ask for the EDC's question. Sorry. Oh, yeah, and I was going to ask this. It just slipped my mind. Would you mind expanding on how gun control is a net negative, argued from liberal values, which profess to stand against racism, sexism, and inequality?
All right, 1 second here.
Oh, look.
We might not be particularly. I had to reset everything. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Okay. I'm glad you had audio. You were able to the audio still, though.
There, we'll try that.
Fancy and nice, so it might take a second.
Might not be quite as.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, anyways, sorry about that, guys.
No, you're fine.
There we go. Okay. Okay, can you read that one more time for me?
Oh, one more time.
It was sure. How do you explain?
Let me see. It got bumped down here. Would you mind explaining on how gun control is a net negative, argued from liberal values, which profess to stand against racism, sexism, and inequality?
Ah, right. Yeah, so you can take a number of different tracks on that. I guess it depends on how much time you have. But one thing that I think particularly resonates is arguing it as a criminal justice reform problem. So the deal with gun control, for one, it really is not making you much safer, but what it is doing is incarcerating a lot of people who haven't actually caused problems. So that argument resonates pretty well, I think. Let's see, what else have we got? Yeah, I mean, it's basically creating new classes of criminals for nonviolent crimes. So like, say for example, you want to lock me up for 10 years for owning a suppressor that is not registered with the NFA. If I actually haven't committed a crime, what are you actually locking me up for? You know, and I think you can kind of wedge in on issues like that by tying them to issues that are already existing and that already appeal to liberal values. Another one that kind of works like that is you can kind of look at red flags, for example, as is basically civil asset forfeiture. So it has all the same problems as civil asset forfeiture. And then you add on the same abuse of the racial inequality in the criminal justice system, and you have like this recipe for disaster, and it doesn't even make you safer anyway. So it's like it's angles like that that can kind of wedge in, I think, on liberal values. So I would kind of, I guess, pick away at it on little issues like that. Arguing it as a net negative is probably a tough sell until you dig down into the individual reasons why it's a net negative. Personally, I think gun control is overwhelmingly racist, and there's just no getting around that. I mean, the idea behind it, the implementation of it, the enforcement of it is all overwhelmingly racist. And you know, there's really not much getting around that, I suppose.
Well, it's so fascinating to me because I see what people like after Maj Toure posts that all gun control is racist, right? And you're
Right.
like, okay, you know, Republicans like, hey, yeah, all gun control is racist. And how many people would be completely against that? It's like, I don't see how it's racist. And first of all, whether you're Republican or Democrat, I would immediately just hit you with the facts of it's absolutely racist. You go from, we're going to talk about just, you know, American Black history, right? My parents are from Nigeria. So I kind of get peeved when it's like, that's not the only Black history.
Right.
But we're going to go over American history. You can start from with gun control being racist, start from slave codes. Slave codes were only in effect to make sure that even those that they deemed worthy, right, of even holding a firearm, the only reason they would have that is if the slave master allowed them to have that firearm. Right. Very, very few instances where that would be allowed. Then that would change too because slavery ended and then went to Black codes where we have Jim Crow.
We've got Jim Crow now.
Right.
Exactly.
And you know, how can we trust Black people to have guns? They've been slaves this whole time.
Absolutely.
So racist.
It's so horrible. It's so bad.
They're always wanting to be the oppressor because they use firearms in order to do so. And it's the same thing even today. So those who are truly the racists would not want any minority group, any other group, period, who they want to oppress to have firearms. So yes, all gun control is racist. It is. It just is. And at least even just Black history, that's how it goes. I could keep going even with on the other side in Africa of like how those people, how there are certain people who were slaves and certain people who were not slaves and how they were able to go be kidnapped. Let's just say that it was those who had more force than the other ones. So those people prevail. And yes, gun control is racist. It's also sexist.
Yes.
So those points should always be effective because they're true. And unfortunately, there's some people who are so the boogeyman, the taboo of identity politics and like stuff like that, that they forget that, no, first of all, it's outreach. Okay. Second of all, we're not saying that just because you have this type of skin color or you have this gender, that therefore you should identify with one type of politics. We're saying that those policies actually affect those people groups even more,
Right.
because the original common denominator is oppression.
Right.
So yeah, that's my soapbox. Sorry.
No, that's a very valid soapbox, and it kind of ties into one of mine too, I guess. So I guess I see a lot of identity politics on both sides. It's just approached a little bit differently. And one of the things I think we fail at as a movement, as a pro-gun movement, is that we have learned that we need diversity. It's crucial. We need it. But we're kind of failing in the way we go about it, because we're looking for people. We're trying to find people that look different, but we're not always respecting the ideological differences they have. Right. And so we kind of drive people away. It's like, all right, I've heard this all the time. How do I get more people that look like you? And I'm like, well, if you want more people that look like me, stop expecting them to think like you. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's scary and it's threatening, especially when you've got a lot of, like, I call it Twitter culture, but it's not just Twitter to blame for this, but you've got a lot of anonymous hate slinging back and forth, right? Mm-hmm. It's scary to think of allowing ideological diversity, but I think that's crucial for continuing our movement long term. So, I mean, it's something we've got to get better at as a movement. So I'm really glad that you're here and that you guys are doing this show, and you're kind of promoting that ideal that I think is going to be absolutely critical to keeping the Second Amendment alive beyond our generation. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
No, you guys are awesome.
Brave enough to be brave enough, like I said, for attacking. But I mean, to be vocal about that, because on both sides you're gonna get attacked for.
Oh yeah, I constantly do. It's really annoying, but well, what are you gonna do? I guess.
I bet. Yeah. Do you have any more questions? I think we'll do one more.
I was just gonna say one thing, and I'm curious what you think about this, Sarah.
Sure.
Because this individual also asked about inequality. And I also think that it's an equality issue as well, because all of these kind of elitist celebrity types, they might have armed guards or they might have like armed security with them all the time. But a lot of people who are living in, like, I don't know, rural America, living in not the best neighborhoods, if you have to rely on the police for your self-defense, it really, that's not a risk that a lot of people should take, actually, because the police can take, 15 minutes to get you or something. And if you're being attacked physically, you don't have that kind of time. So financially speaking, I actually think that the gun control issue it actually starts to hurt the poor. I really think it does, because if you can't afford the security detail, if you can't afford to have somebody keeping you safe or to live in a gated community or something like that, if you have to walk home on dangerous streets at night, it's you that gets affected by having the Second Amendment taken away. I was just curious what you thought about that.
No, I could not agree more. It absolutely harms disadvantaged people more. And so I'll kind of recognize I've got tons and tons of privilege. Like, I have a good career and I'm able to live in a safe neighborhood. And the police, I think the average police response time in my neighborhood is 8 minutes, but it's realistically between 2 minutes and like 10 minutes. So I don't really care, particularly what the police response time is, because any time is unacceptable to me that I need to wait for my own defense. And that's why I think it's so important for me to empower myself to defend myself, because I'm not willing to wait 2 minutes for rescue. I'm not willing to wait 4 minutes, and I'm not willing to wait. I'm not willing to wait 15 minutes. I'm not willing to wait at all when my life is on the line. And I do think that absolutely comes down harder on people who aren't as lucky as me to live in a place where the cops are 2 minutes away.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I do have one more question here. let's see, where did it just go? What are your thoughts on teachers carrying firearms in schools?
Ooh, that is a spicy one.
Yeah.
We just had
One of the reasons that shows it.
Yeah, no, I just had a really good discussion about that on social media the other day. So I don't think anyone should pressure teachers to be armed or require teachers to be armed, but as a person who does carry on a fairly regular basis, I don't think that right should end in a school. So if there is one teacher that believes that believes and feels empowered to carry to protect their lives, that's enough for me to say, okay, this is worth it. And then again, as someone who does carry and who does take that right and responsibility very seriously, I don't particularly see a problem with allowing it in that case. I know there are a lot of teachers that don't want to carry, and I totally respect that too. And I don't think that teacher carry is a solution, but I do think it's something that can empower a person as an individual. So I'm all for that.
Okay, awesome.
Thank
right
you,
on.
Brett Ralston, for that question.
Yeah,
that's a great question.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. You guys have more questions. We'll look at them, but we're not going to get her to answer it on camera because we would be here for hours. I think I would just, even my own questions, we would be here for hours. So that means we're going to have you back on, Sarah.
Oh, darn. All right.
we're going to have to do a part 2 later on. So
yeah, well, you guys are awesome, and I really appreciate the work you do. So I would be thrilled to come back anytime.
Yes, awesome. We're really glad to hear that. But Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell our audience where, if people want to, talk to you, have more questions, or interact with you, or follow you, support your work, or the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus? Can you tell them more about that?
Oh, and I really should have clarified this immediately, but I'm just speaking as an individual. I'm not speaking on behalf of the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus. However, if you want to follow some of the stuff we're doing, which we're doing things like debates in the community. We're doing things like testifying at hearings. We're doing a ton of behind the scenes work with electioneering. And if you'd like to support that, you can go to gunowners.mn. And if you live out of state, join. If you live out of state, donate. One thing I hear a lot from people, say you live in a state where gun rights are a priority and they're safe and secure. That's awesome. Like, good for you. Help us. Help us. And if you don't have anything to worry about, help a state that does. So that's one thing you can do. And if you are in one of those battleground states, or if you are in one of those kind of lost cause states, solicit all the help you can get. And, we can kind of teamwork this as a country where people can kind of help each other based on what they have to give. So there you go. That's my my liberal commie attitude on voluntary giving and donation. But yeah, we can all voluntarily help each other, and that's very good for our movement. So I know, like, I'm a member of a couple of the California organizations, and I support them financially because it's like something I can do from here, like help those guys out, and they need it. So
well, that's a big misconception, is that conservatives, liberty people, that they just completely hate anything that has to do with us, right? Like people, individuals coming together. No, we're saying that we don't want the government making that decision for us. Community that's just how we are. We need each other.
Right.
Period.
Voluntarism and voluntary community work is so important.
Absolutely. So yeah. Of course, we want everybody to come together for a common cause. That's important. We just don't want the government making that decision for us.
Yep. I get where you're coming from, for sure.
So awesome. Well, we will end at that. What a great classically liberal ending talking point to talk about. So thank you so much again, Sarah, Cade.
Thank you again. I really appreciate it.
We enjoyed it. We learned a lot, and I'm sure our audience did too. So we will talk to you again later.
Sounds good. All right.
Bye, girl.
Bye.
Wow. So that was Sarah Cade, everyone.
Yes.
So happy that you guys submitted questions. And one thing I just want to say is that I think conversations like this, where we're talking to someone that ordinarily might be on the other side of the aisle, is just so important to protect the Second Amendment. We got to do this more.
Absolutely. Yeah. If we really care about the Second Amendment, that's the thing, is what is more important to you? So I think people have to have that conversation for yourself, not making it for you. But I think I'm also learning that too, is that does it help or hurt when and I will say, I forgot to ask this question. I was going to ask her, how, I guess, because I'm sure there's other people, the elephant in the room, right? I'm going to start using that elephant, a donkey, hedgehog, each time. I don't know what the Green Party's symbol is. I don't know if they have an animal, but whatever.
What is it, a tree?
Is it? Yeah, I know, right? It
Probably
should be a tree. AOC right now? I don't know. So my whole thing, though, is, as a Republican right now, is the fact that I became one because at the end of the day, they've done the best when it comes to gun rights. I will say libertarians do a really good job in theory, but we haven't seen them in action yet, unfortunately. In theory, and not saying anything against them, but for the most part, they have. And that's also because when you're voting for a Democrat, though, that's what's hard for me to reconcile, is that you are voting for that anti-gun policy. And I know she was talking about that, a little back and forth. So that one was hard for me. And I think that's going to be part 2, is asking her that question. But I don't know if you guys also, if you have any pro-gun Democrats who are watching right now who can answer that question for us. But I think also that comes down to the individual, because it depends on the person and why you vote for who you vote for.
And that is something you have to decide. Like, are you a one-issue voter, or are you more of a whole package voter, or are you just not like a voter at all? Or I don't know.
Yeah.
People have all kinds of different opinions about that.
Yeah, it's not black and white.
I do think, though, that pro-2A Democrats have a particularly rough presidential choice to make. Because I do agree that Donald Trump actually isn't the best on Second Amendment issues, but compared to the field of the Democrats, I mean, oh my God.
And I wonder who the libertarian person is going to be. I really don't know.
Because
it's not, because I was correct.
Well, Bill Weld is running as a Republican.
So
which he should have anyway the first time. I mean, I guess he was running for vice president or whatever, but
doesn't that just, and someone was like, he's the future of the party. I'm like, if he's the future of the party, then the party is going anti-gun, because we're not doing very well right now in the state level and federally. So,
and the party's not going to be libertarian either. I mean, it's not really anyway.
It was the platform was supposed to be. That's what the Libertarian Party really is. Is the Republican Party was supposed to be libertarian.
Yeah. Someone was supposed to be libertarian of the Democrats and the Republicans, but we all had to start doing our own thing. I don't know. Liberty got split up into a lot of different stuff.
I hate that.
So I guess we should check the live stream just to see if there's anyone who has a question for us specifically. David's Bach says, where is this mythical state where gun rights are secure? Yeah, I'd like to know. I'd like to know too.
Yeah, and even if there were, that's why I'm so hesitant every time someone says that. I'm like, it can change. And when you're complacent, like she was saying in the Republican Party, like that's the danger of you. Like all Democrats are bad, and basically because people become lazy and thinking the Republican Party is the only choice, and then also that they're the ones who are doing well on that issue. While the Republicans are just like the same thing that the Democrats did with the with black people in general. Like, look, we get 95% of the vote from black people. We're good. We get 95% of gun owners. We're good.
Right. And
what happens then? Exactly.
And they also don't even have to actually follow through with it either, because the other side is so anti anything that even if they can just say they're for it and not do anything, like that guy in Texas,
Speaker Bonin.
So it's just a mess. So, and the last comment I'll just read here is from Geography Czar. He says, social media doesn't like ideological diversity. Just ask Antonia. I find it strange that a Democrat would talk up ideological diversity, but I do agree about conservatives demanding conformity too. But that was from Geography Czar. But yeah, I mean, I don't think I think that a real liberal actually does care about ideological diversity.
Yeah.
An authoritarian leftist probably doesn't, but an actual liberal should.
Yeah. Oh, that's the problem, is that I feel like classically liberal people don't really have a home
Yeah, what do
right
they
now.
do?
I mean, it should be Libertarian parties except when they act up and do like go well.
They're just awful.
So
the Libertarian Party doesn't have love for Republicans. They don't have love for Democrats or Libertarians.
Yeah. Oh no.
Just-
First of all, excuse you. First of all, they don't have love from Libertarians.
I know.
Let's be
First
very
and
real.
foremost, they don't have love from their base.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be a problem.
Yeah. Oh, Libertarians, I love you. I want you to be successful. I really do.
I do too. I wish they would.
Maj, can you be the future of the Libertarian Party?
I would vote.
Saying.
I would vote Maj.
I'm just saying. And that criminal justice reform answer she had, that is so true. We talked about this with Rachel Malone from Gun Owners of America, the whole knife rights issue of them using that in New York. Oh, goodness, guys. I hope you guys got like all these nuggets of what she was saying. So many good things. If you're really about changing hearts and minds, there were so many things that she said that were just like, go to the range, talk to them about things that are not, political. I mean, be a human being. Talk
Phrase
about
it in their frame of mind or
limited
their
government,
like their lens of politics.
Yeah,
it's all really important.
That's why principles matter, because if you're talking about all this other stuff, then they can't get to the core issue of criminal justice reform should be a bipartisan issue because it's about limited government, which actually I shouldn't say that because there are leftists who are very big government, but they'll say they're pro criminal justice reform, right? Only when it suits them. So they're not being intellectually honest for them. So, but if you want to be intellectually honest, then just focus on the Second Amendment and the principles there and be principled, principle over party.
Right. And I'm sure that I disagree with Sarah on all kinds of stuff.
Oh yeah.
But she's a good Democrat. Like we need more people like her.
Yeah. She's willing to have a conversation. There's good Republicans, good Libertarians, good human beings in general. People who don't care about politics at all. Good people who want to have conversations. We need more of that, especially for our generation. But you guys were awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We will be back next Monday, I promise.
We really will. I'm not gonna mess it up, I swear.
Not sure what time, but we will be. So just make sure you press subscribe first of all, and then press that button, the little bells, because that's when you really, instead of just when is Antonia gonna post about what time it's gonna be, you'll get a automatic in real time notification of when we're live, and that's all that really matters, guys, because we're gonna say 5:30 again, and we're not gonna be there.
It's true.
We love being our stereotype,
and also. We don't pretend we didn't say that.
Yeah. No.
But also follow us on social media. Our Instagram and Twitter should be in the description, I think. I think it is.
We'll make it.
I'll add it later. It's not.
Be a Patreon. Become a Patreon.
Yeah, and
Patreon.
Exactly. If you want to support the work we do, help us get into a studio, help us maybe get a producer, all this good stuff. Think about being a patron for us.
Yeah.
It's trigger warning to a podcast on Patreon. And thank you so much to our patrons that have already signed up. We are so grateful and thankful for your contributions. It really makes all the difference to us in the world.
Yeah, but those 3 kisses, whatever, 2 kisses were only for those patrons. Yeah. Patrons, whatever.
You don't
like,
get
Antonia,
for free.
know what that means. Oh, it's so hard for me. Okay, anyways, for those people who know how to say that word, that is because it's not for those other people who are not supporting us. Just kidding. You guys are helping out too, but
just by watching this, you guys
just by watching us, share and support, again, subscribe. But we'll see you guys next week, and you guys have a great day.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, everyone.
Bye.